Hello, and welcome to Introducing Me. I'm your host, Sarah. I started this podcast to get to know other people and lifestyles while discovering more about myself. Each episode, I give a new guest a chance to discuss their background, culture, interests, or whatever they want to talk about to help increase all of our own worldviews. In September, around my podcast anniversary, I do a yearly check-in where I am more of the guest than the host. If you listened to that episode, you heard me talk about my plans to continue the podcast through to September 2025 in a similar fashion as I have this past year. However, a little over a month after I recorded that episode, I decided that I wanted 2025 to look different for myself, and I decided to wrap up and end my podcast this year. So today's guest will be the last guest, and next week I'll be back to again act more as a guest to give you some more updates. Over the years, when I have met with guests, I have had plenty of them offer a chance to record again and give an update. So when I was planning out this final guest episode, I decided to do just that. Offer this episode to a previous guest whose life looks very different from when we last heard from her. We heard from Julia Davis in March 2021, less than a year out from her college graduation, when she was on various business endeavors. Since then, Julia moved into a home with a chicken coop, which was home to a cat now nicknamed Coop. Sharing her journey with Coop on TikTok, Julia has established the Coop Kitty community, which has brought a lot of good to the world and truly changed Julia's journey. So I'm excited to have Julia back again today to share more about what's happened in these past couple of years and where she is now. So thank you so much, Julia. Why don't you, again, share with the audience more about you and what you're doing these days?
Well, thank you so much for having me back on the podcast, Sarah. I believe your podcast was the very first podcast I ever did back in 2021, which was so exciting. So it's such an honor to be back on your podcast now for the very last episode. Since we last talked, a lot has changed. Like you said, I was fresh out of my undergrad and I was in the middle of my graduate degree. I was planning to get my master's in PR, look for a job either in corporate America or higher education. And I was going to work a job for 30 years and retire. That was the plan. And, the universe just put me on a totally different trajectory and I could not be more thankful, but it has been quite the journey finding changes to this path that I truly could not have anticipated or even dreamed of. I finished that degree in May of 2022. And like you said, I moved into a house with a chicken coop in the backyard, and there was a scraggly, white, skinny cat living in that chicken coop. And I randomly posted a video on TikTok about him, and I had no idea that that video would change my life, his life, and ultimately the life of hundreds of people and animals across the US and the world. So that's kind of where the journey started from the last time we talked.
And so then how has Coop kind of changed, not going into the corporate career, not following that original trajectory? What sort of made those sort of things switch up?
So when I found Coop and posted the initial video that kind of took off and people took interest in his story, I actually was working a job in higher education. That's why I moved to that house. The house was the closest to what I could afford, close to the job that I got in higher education at the time. And I was planning to stay at that job. And a little bit after starting that job, I realized that was probably not the path I wanted to be on, but I did not want to pursue TikTok full time. It just felt silly to leave. I got a job at a great state school right out of graduate school, and I felt really fortunate to be able to get a job like that and start building my 401k and building towards retirement, and hopefully, start at the bottom and work my way up to hopefully being a director one day. That was kind of the goal and the dream. And I absolutely loved the field I was in. I didn't love the position I was in at the time, but I feel like everyone just kind of has to pay their dues at the beginning of their career. Working a job where you feel like you aren't appreciated and aren't making enough, I feel like that's just kind of like, you just do it at the beginning of your career to get where you want to be. So that's where I was. And I can't lie, I was really unhappy. And then I found this cat and this community on TikTok that was following this cat. And that brought me a lot of happiness. And I never moved to monetize that account because I got a degree to make money. I work my job to make money. That's what I'm going to do. And I'll post on TikTok on the side. Well, 10 months after I started that job, they had a massive budget cut. And one of the first things to get cut was the salary for my job. They said it was nothing personal. It was one of those, it was the newest position in the department. I was the last one hired, so I was the first one out. And so they laid me off at the end of 2022. There I was in a new city with, at that point, 3 new cats, thanks to the cat distribution system and a chicken coop in my backyard, and about to have no job. And my laptop died the day that I found out I was getting laid off. So that was an extra little, like, the universe just being like, here, have a little extra fun today. The MacBook I had had for 6 years and no problems. The day I got laid off, just died. I thought, at that point I had about 500,000 followers on TikTok, which was really wild because it was something I like stubbed my toe and fell into. It was never a goal or ambition of mine to be a TikToker. I don't like looking at my own face or hearing my own voice that much. It's really kind of grating to watch yourself every day and edit your own videos. But I thought I could always find another job in PR. As long as people say dumb things on the internet, I will always be able to find a job in public relations. But I didn't think I could always build off the momentum from TikTok that I had at that time. So I gave myself a timeline and said, let's see if we can make money doing this. If we can, great. If not, I tried, and I will look for another job in PR. And January 1st of 2025 will be 2 full years of being a full-time TikToker. And that is kind of the journey of going from higher education to full-time TikToker. And I truly don't know if I would have had the guts to make the jump from a state job to TikToker if they had not laid me off. I don't think I would have been brave enough to do it. I think I probably would have felt very silly leaving a state job, even if one that I wasn't particularly fond of, to be a TikToker. So I'm really thankful that they did have that budget cut and they let me go because it let me spread my wings in ways that I didn't think were possible.
And so when you started, really focusing on TikTok, saying, can I survive financially by doing this? What were you posting about? How were you, maybe growing your audience, bringing in an income that you were able to say, I can continue this?
So when I started doing it full time, I actually started fostering cats and kittens. The initial journey that I think everybody kind of fell in love with on our account was the story of the cat in the chicken coop, and then the second cat on the roof of the chicken coop, and then the 2 feral kittens under the shed. That story lived and came to its natural conclusion probably around the time that I got laid off. And up until then, I'd been posting daily updates of getting the older cats healthy. We found out they were FIV positive, and I walked my community on TikTok through the journey of learning what FIV was and how we were going to take care of that, through getting them fixed, through getting their skin healthy, through socializing these 2 feral kittens, to the decision to keep the 2 adults and one of the feral kittens, and my parents taking the other one. That story did come to its natural conclusion. So I thought, I'm not sure if I'm going to have these daily updates to post anymore. It was actually one of my best friends and my tia, my aunt, who suggested that I start fostering. Because not only would it give my audience a look at another side of what rescue can look like, and from the PR standpoint, if you can show somebody what something can look like, they're more likely to do it. And I was like, oh, I could show people firsthand what it's like to foster. The cats will get something good out of it. And as a bonus, it will give me something to post about. So in January, I started fostering cats. And that's kind of been the journey since then, with, of course, still showing the original Coop Kitties, our OGs. And since then, we've had between 20 and 25 foster cats cycle through the house. I've only foster failed once, which I'm very proud of myself for. So my total is now at 5, but we've had a lot of cats come through. So that's what I do and post about now.
And that one foster failure, how is it that, you have been able to not foster fail more often and, find these kitties new homes, but then you did say yes to one of them?
Saying goodbye is always the hardest. It does not get easier, but I try to think in my head that I am caring for somebody else's cat. From the time they come into my home, I try to think that this is somebody else's cat. There's not even a possibility of them being my cat. And that helps. And I also think it's good for it not to be easy to let go because that means that they're getting love and they're worth getting attached. People are like, oh, I would get attached. I'm like, and you should. It's worth it for them, for somebody to show enough love to them that you get a little bit attached. It's good for their development and their ability to connect with a person, even if that's not you, with their forever family. But there was something about this group. This was my first group of neonates that I had ever had. I had had bottle babies once before, but I got them at 4 weeks. This group I got at 4 days old. So they were closer to mice than they were to cats. I mean, they were truly kind of alien looking. And she was the only girl of the group and she was the runt. And I honestly did not think she was going to make it. She did not eat very well for the first 3 or 4 days, which at that size was just really concerning. But she did. She made it. And then we actually lost her brother at 6 weeks. So there was a little more trauma bonding in that experience. And that was my first really significant loss with rescue and fostering. And after that, I just knew I cannot let her go. If I thought I could have 6 cats, I would have kept her and her other brother, but he's placed with one of my very good friends, and that is the perfect place for him. I don't want to stretch myself too thin. She also bonded with my other cats and my dog. So in a way, I kind of made the decision and they finalized the decision that this is where she's meant to be. And now I am good. 5 is enough.
5 is enough. So how do you get these various fosters in? If it's do you kind of work with one organization? Is it people just reaching out to you in your community? Because it seems like you have a bit of a revolving door for other cats.
Yeah. So in the beginning, I did not want to foster independently because that means that I would be paying for everything independently. And while TikTok is a sustainable career for myself, rescuing can be very expensive. So when I decided I wanted to foster, I wanted to pick a smaller nonprofit because at that point, I knew that my community was bringing a lot of exposure to causes that I was bringing to the community. And shelters are really great and they do a lot of great work, but I wanted to bring exposure to maybe a smaller nonprofit that didn't have as much exposure. A lot of shelters in the area already had a lot of people that knew about them. So I thought it would be really cool to pick a nonprofit that was smaller, maybe even one that didn't have a physical location. And luckily, our vet, who I adore and love and really credit with saving these cats' lives and helping me get them to a healthy point, they knew of a very, very small nonprofit that was just made of foster homes. And I started working with them, and that is who I usually foster through. I did start making exceptions and started fostering some cats independently. And that is a very different ball game because I pay for everything. My community helps me pay for it, but I also have to pick the adoptees. And that is a very intimidating process, or at least I find that process very intimidating because I feel so much more responsible for finding the right family. Whereas when I was fostering through the nonprofit, they adopted out all of the kittens. I just helped them get to the healthy point of ready for adoption and they picked the families.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be something that is a little bit taxing and figuring out the best ways to go about that. And of course, as you have so many cats in the background in your house, we might hear some little disruptions here and there. My cats right now are being nice, quiet angels, which is not always the case when I record. So how is it, that you do find these families when you do end up taking in cats for without going through this nonprofit? Are you mostly doing things through friends or people you already know? Or because your TikTok reach is much larger than just your area?
Absolutely. Yes. So the first group that I adopted out myself, I put an application through Google Forms up on my link tree. on my bio in TikTok, and I had several applications and just kind of felt drawn to one. And at the time, I had a group of two, and they were actually two boys, and they were not related to each other at all, but they were the same age, and I raised them together. And this family adopted both of them. So that was wonderful. And that's kind of how I went about it. I got this lady's information. We talked on the phone, learned about her and her family, and felt that it was a really good match for them to take both of those boys.
And so then what are you kind of like doing now in terms of how many cats you're willing to take?
Wow, Sarah, that is a great question because I probably would have had a very different answer even 6 months ago. Now that I have five of my own, I'm not sure where the limit is, but prior to this, the most I had ever had in my house was eight. I had four of my own, and I had groups of four fosters coming through. Currently, there are nine in my house. I have five of my own, four fosters, and I'm picking up another foster kitten on Wednesday of this week, which will bring my total to 10. And something about that double digits, just like, okay, girly, we should reevaluate what we can handle. But I did move to a larger home for the sole purpose of having room to foster more cats. So I have a dedicated foster room now. Before, I did not have a foster room. So now I have a room that I can solely use for fostering. I also have another spare bathroom that I can use for fostering, which makes the process so much easier for me, easier for them. And I have a basement now where I can do our big donation drives, and I did not have that before. So I'm not sure what the limit is. I feel like once I reach the limit, I will know.
That's understandable as you've gotten into a bigger space, figuring out, the ebbs and flows. Now, in a typical foster timeline, now that you have space where you can kind of like segregate them, how do you integrate them into life with other cats, life with a dog, making sure that like things are okay? What does that timeline typically look like?
It really depends on where the cat is on their journey when they come to us. So when I had the neonates that were so young, they were too young to be vaccinated against things, but they also could have had something that they could have passed to my cats, even though my cats are fully vaccinated. You can't really prevent things like ringworm, and we did have a ringworm outbreak in the house, so that was hard. And they were so little that they were with us for much longer because they were so young when they came to me. They were on bottles for a full 6 weeks in my home. So there's not much we can do with that. In that process, though, after they're healthy and clear to meet my cats, I have a couple of, I call like my foster superstars, who are really accepting of other cats, like outside of our little group. I have a couple that want nothing to do with any fosters, and frankly, kind of want nothing to do with each other. And they're fine just kind of doing their own thing. But I also have a 60-pound dog who absolutely loves cats. And she's really wonderful to have around foster cats. So at least, even if the cats are not interacting with her really closely, they're used to being around a dog. I try to keep the cats, or get the cats as used to as many situations as possible when they're in my care, so that they can be adopted to families. We don't have to exclude families because, oh, they have a dog, oh, they have a small child, they have another cat. I want them to be as used to being around people and other animals as possible when they go to their forever homes.
And, because you said how saying goodbye is the hardest, do you get updates about your cats after they have found their forever homes and left your foster care?
Yes and no. The family that I adopted directly to, not through the nonprofit, she actually posts about them on TikTok, and we're mutuals on TikTok. So I see them now as adults, which is really cool. The nonprofit that I foster with, is kind of the middleman in between me, the foster parent, and the forever family. So there's not always the like link and communication between us. Some people have reached out to me via TikTok or email, and that's really, really wonderful. But I get so many messages that sometimes those get lost and I don't get to connect with them. So the answer is yes and no. The more I can see of them, the better. The two boys that went to the family that I adopted out, that was probably at that point the hardest goodbye because I had had them for 3 full months. Before then, I maybe had a group for 10 days or 3 weeks. 3 months is a long time to have these cats, and it was a new element for me adopting them out myself and paying for everything myself. There was just a little bit of a different connection there. And I actually flew them to the Dallas Fort Worth area to meet with their forever family. So then we had that experience of flying together, and it did my heart a lot of good to be able to see them in their new home through TikTok, thriving and growing and building connections with their new family. So the more I can see, the better. But it's not always reality when it comes to fostering, and that is just something that you have to go into it. It's nice if you get it, but it's expected that you won't.
Mm-hmm. And so then how is it, you have to let these kitty cats go, they find their forever homes, you're bringing in new cats. What kind of is your hope for fostering in the future? Like, is this kind of the plan is to just kind of keep going and keep documenting all of their journeys on TikTok?
Right now, that is the plan. If I have learned one thing over the last 3 years, it is plans can go awry at any moment. And the way that I have found the best success is to go with the flow and not put up so much resistance when I think the path should look different. If you had asked me the last time I was on your podcast if I would be fostering cats, living alone in a house in Birmingham, I would have said absolutely not. So going with the flow helps a lot. And ultimately, my goal is to continue fostering. It helps the cats. It helps the forever families who get to adopt these kitties, but it also helps inspire other people to foster. And if I can inspire one other person to take a chance on fostering or even rescuing a cat or rescuing an adult cat, taking in an adult that might be FIV positive, then that makes all the time that I spend doing it and posting about it worth it.
So then, because, TikTok has become full time for you, you are, kind of working out of your own home. How does fostering sort of like disrupt daily life?
That is a great question. Fostering is unpredictable because they're cats that we're not used to having in our house. After a certain point, it's kind of like they're kind of integrated into our daily routine. But just like with my cats, I don't expect anything out of the foster cats in terms of filming. I've always said these are animals who have their own autonomy. They're not circus monkeys, and I don't make them do anything, and I can't expect anything of them. If I happen to capture something really cute while I'm holding one of them, awesome. But some days it just doesn't happen. And I used to be really adamant about posting every single day. My mental health took a toll with that. And sometimes cats are just not feeling it. And I'm not in the business of making them. So sometimes we get great content, sometimes we don't. But when we add fosters, it adds another element of things that we can film of, but it also adds another unknown. I don't know how they're going to respond to things. And right now I have 3 feral kittens. So they are not cuddly and sweet. That has been a change. And I would love to show that to TikTok, but right now that's not reality. So I'm showing them the reality of they want me to keel over most days. They would not like to see me. They want nothing to do with me for the most part, but they've seen the the journey. So I had to shift to look how cute and cuddly they are, to look at the progress we're making from them hissing and spitting at me to they kind of come up to me for a treat. And that is some major progress. Just kind of following their lead and going with the flow.
And so then for feral kittens, is it kind of like you have to see through to ideally where they will come up to you for treats, where they will be amenable, that is when you're able to adopt them out?
That is the hope. Ideally, they would be not feral at all. But at this point, I think the best we can hope for is that they will. Well, it's different for all of them. There's one that I think his best hope is he is going to be a one-person cat. And for him, I'm actually thinking of finding his forever home sooner so that he can bond with his person. And that tends to be more of the case in my experience with ferals, is they kind of bond to a person. And I don't want to be that person for him and then take that away from him. Whereas the other two, I really think they will become snuggly with anybody given enough time and working with them. So that is ultimately the goal, but sometimes it is not the reality that they're going to be these like perfectly cuddly, friendly, sweet cats. One of them I truly think will probably be elusive for most of his life. He could surprise me. He has surprised me up until now, I must say, but I think he will probably be a one-person cat.
Yes. We have a bit of an elusive one, but after a couple years, he's slowly starting to make some tides and being a little bit more human amenable. He plays with his brother all the time, but likes his personal space. Now, you mentioned a little bit about, how you at one point were posting every day and it took a toll on your mental health. So what has your mental health journey been like with social media and making sure that you are maintaining a good place to be in?
It has changed over the last few years. I feel as though I'm very fortunate in that I have a really, really supportive, kind community of people on TikTok. Social media can be a really dark place, and people can sit behind a keyboard and say absolutely anything they want about you. And I can say to myself all day long, they only see 3 minutes of my day. They're not judging me based on myself as a person, but on those 3 minutes and blah, blah, blah. But when somebody is throwing insults at you, and honestly pretty personal ones, it's hard not to take it to heart. And posting every day and seeing comments like that every day did take a bit of a toll. But I also struggled with wanting to take a little step back because my community is so awesome. And at the end of the day, them watching my videos was what allowed me to pay my rent and afford taking care of these animals who I love and they love. So I really struggled probably around the 1 year mark of what do I owe myself versus what do I owe my audience? Do I owe it to them every day to share little bits of my life? Do I owe it to them to share personal information about my life? Do I owe it to them to share the good, the bad, and the ugly? Is that cutting myself short by sharing things that maybe I don't want to share with my audience? So finding that balance took time, and I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect balance of that, and it'll probably change as time goes on and as life ebb and flows and changes. But finding a balance and trying to stay true to myself of what I want to share with my audience has helped with my mental health, and also being upfront with my audience that I'm having a hard time and seeing them say, we're going to be here when you come back in a few days, like take some time. That helped a lot. Some people truly want to post every day, and I totally get that. But for the most part, they really are understanding that I'm a person too, and posting 7 days a week is a lot of work. And they're very understanding, and I'm very lucky with a really great audience.
Yes. And I mean, the audience, I would say, comes from, the content that you're putting out, the attitudes and the information that you're putting out there. You want a collective community, you want something positive. So, what kind of journeys has your audience been able to help support you on in this last couple of years?
Oh my goodness. We have done more charitable work than I ever thought was possible. That's always kind of been where my heart was to help people. And that's something that I really felt lacking in my higher education job. I didn't feel as though I was getting to help people or animals as much. I've always been an animal person. Getting to help animals with the help of TikTok, like these animals that I found, was the start of something really beautiful. And at the very beginning of our TikTok journey, I never asked for help, but people asked how they could help. So I splashed up a GoFundMe for the initial vet bills and put up an Amazon wish list. And we were probably getting 100 packages a day for a while of cat food, to the point where I was like, we're not going to be able to use all this before it starts going bad. And so I told my audience that I was going to start giving it away to other animals in need. And even the money, they raised so much money that I thought, we have enough. Let's share this kindness. Like, it would be so selfish of me to not share this kindness with other people that we've been shown. And my audience's reaction to that was, well, if you're going to give it away, we're going to keep giving and we're going to help more people and animals. So over the last 2 years, we have probably given away between $80,000 and $90,000 in funds to various nonprofits and causes that we're all passionate about. And I would say between $100,000 and $200,000 of supplies through Amazon wish lists and donation drives. And that is something that I am so incredibly thankful for and proud of. And it would not happen without this community. I put up the wish list, but they purchase everything. I sort it, but they buy it. It would not be possible without them. And it all started because of a little scraggly cat in a chicken coop.
Yes, it's definitely been such a journey from where you first came with that one video. Now, we like on TikTok, you show the cats, you show some of these drives and stuff like that. But behind the scenes, there must be a lot of logistics when it comes to all of this and getting donations and giving out, you know, gifts and all of that. So what does that look like for you, for maybe like if you have an established business, like the legal and business side of things? How do you manage all of that?
There's actually a lot more that goes into it than meets the eye, as you said. In the beginning, when we were getting a lot of monetary donations, I had legal questions, of course. Do I need to be setting some of this aside to be? Do I need to pay taxes on this? What do I need to, what do I need to report and where? And then with the physical goods, what do I need to be reporting? What do I need to be keeping track of? So I took care of talking to legal teams at the beginning to learn how I could cross my T's and dot my I's. Now, the main logistics of everything is, okay, we're going to do this donation drive, and I have an audience that is incredible and is going to gift hundreds of items per day to this cause or that cause. Awesome. Where are those things going to go? At my other house, I didn't have a foster room. I didn't have a spare room. I didn't have a garage. So over 100 packages from Amazon would come in every day. They would go into my little bitty living room. I would unpackage everything, consolidate boxes, and put them aside as much as I could into my shed or into my carport, and hoped and prayed it didn't rain. And we would do the same thing, or I would do the same thing the next day. One of the huge selling points of moving to a larger home was having a room for fostering. But I also have a finished basement that is purely for donation drives. That's where I can sort things, store things until it's time to take them to wherever they're going. And that takes a huge burden off of figuring out where these things are going to go in the meantime. The other logistic that has come up with every donation drive is how we're going to get them there. More times than not, I've had to rent a U-Haul to get donations to where they need to go, which is such a great problem to have. But what I did not account for in the beginning was, if I'm collecting physical goods, I wasn't collecting money. So I ended up paying for the U-Haul myself out of my pocket, which was totally fine. And then all the time that I was spending opening packages, I was not talking to brands to work on brand contracts or making videos. So I say that I lose money on every donation drive that I do, but it's still so worth it. But those are just some logistics behind the scenes that go into all the donation drives and even the gifting money and keeping track of that. It's been a learning process. And if I was smart, I would probably hire a couple elves to help me around our Christmas and Thanksgiving drives, but I just haven't done that yet. But I'll probably get there at some point.
Yes. And so you just mentioned, kind of working with brands that, is kind of something that comes up a lot in social media and making sure you're staying afloat. So what has brand deals looked like for you?
Brand deals are truly kind of what keep me afloat. It's a mixture of brand deals and the TikTok Creator Fund. Those two things allow me to pay my rent every month, set a little bit aside in savings. For the most part, I now am at the point where I've got my brands that I love to work with, and I've built some connections with the teams that manage the influencer marketing for those brands. A lot of brands will hire an influencer marketing agency to find the influencers, do the work, do the contracts, and I built connections with those agencies. So I've got my brands that I love, like Arm & Hammer is one of my absolute favorites to work with. Ring, doorbells, wellness. I just did a campaign with them, and Wisdom Panel. I'm doing a holiday campaign for them. I actually love doing the brands and the contracts myself. A lot of influencers will have a manager who helps them, and I've played around with having managers before, and there's absolutely so much value that they bring to the table. But as someone with a public relations background who used to study pitching to brands, getting to do that for myself to brands is actually really fulfilling. And I'm a bit of a PR nerd. So getting to come up with the ideas and writing up the contracts and learning what to look for in contracts kind of scratches that itch of now not working in public relations in a full-time job. So it allows me to kind of still use my degree while making money, doing something completely unrelated to what I got my degree for, which is really nice. And I absolutely love working with brands.
Right.
Not all of them, but most of them.
Well, and I was just going to ask, have you had an experience where maybe you've gone sour with a brand or needed to be like, absolutely not, I'm not connecting with you? Like, what do maybe those lesser sunshiny things like that, how do those fall out?
Yeah, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I do want to be transparent. There's only been one contract that I ever did where we got to the point of the contract is signed, we're in the production stage and the posting, where I almost backed out because I was so angry. But now I kind of know what to look for in the contract ahead of time before signing and know the questions to ask. Transparency on the brand side is the thing that I value the most. There have been a couple times where I haven't gotten a lot of clarity up front of what they want. I film something, send it to them, and then they send me a script back. Actually, can you say these points? Like, yes, however, if you had told me that up front, I absolutely would have done that. And in my niche, I am usually working with pet brands, which means I'm filming with animals. And like I said earlier, they're animals, not, I can't make them do anything. They're not circus monkeys, and they're cats. I mean, even my dog will be like, I'll sit for a treat. My cats are like, no, lady, what are you talking about? Sit here and eat this food. No. So getting a brand video completed with an animal and then having to start it over because the brand was not forthcoming up front with exactly what they wanted was really frustrating. Now I know to ask, are there specific points that you would like me to talk about in this video? Do you want the cats to be wearing a collar in the video? I had that come up. for a brand. And, what kind of things do you want in the background? Do you want a voiceover versus talking to the camera? So I know to ask those things up front now, whereas I didn't a little bit towards the beginning. And I know how to look at the contract and look for things where someone might try to pull a fast one on me. I will say, for the most part, the brands that I work with in this niche are very upstanding. There are a few brands that reach out that are kind of outside of my niche that I don't think are the most ethical businesses, and I don't want to bring that to my audience. I'm pretty picky with the brands that I work with, especially since I want to be authentic and using the brands that I'm promoting to my audience. So I just choose not to work with those and just kindly pass them up. But of course, there have been a couple of scenarios where I've been pretty peeved with some brands.
Yes, I would never expect you to throw a specific brand under the bus, but I appreciate the ability to be transparent in something that, it helps pays your bills, but you have to be of the right mind to make sure you're doing what you want to be doing with them.
Absolutely.
Now, TikTok is more than just a place where you're posting videos, sharing cute things that the cats are doing. You've got this great community of viewers, of people who will donate to the various causes you're supporting. What has kind of like the other side of the screen as a creator, connecting with other creators and, receiving awards for your TikTok work? What has all of that been like in this 2-year full-time career?
Being able to connect with other creators, I'll start there, has been a game changer, I will say. So being a content creator, at least in my niche that I'm in, I'm at home with my animals a lot, filming with my pets, and that's wonderful. I joke that I'm a stay-at-home cat mom or a work-from-home cat mom, which is really fun. But the flip side of that is a lot of days I feel like I'm on an island by myself. I'm not going into an office. I'm not really interacting with other people. Or if I am interacting, like the days where I do get to interact with brands, that's awesome. But we're interacting for, a contract. And we're not, once that contract is up, we're not conversing anymore unless we're going to re-up that contract. So then I'm kind of back to being on this island, filming and posting things on my own, and not having other coworkers per se to talk to or even commiserate with about like, oh my gosh, like this is terrible, or did you see this update or whatnot, or have you talked to this brand? Connecting with other creators gives me an opportunity to get off this little island and talk to other people who experience this very odd career that we are all experiencing. And that has been really wonderful. I have a few quote unquote cat talk besties. So actually this past weekend, one of my good friends, Madeline, she has the Fruit Cats on TikTok. She came and visited, and that was a lot of fun. And we just talked about like, oh my gosh, yes, what's Q4 been like for you? Q4 for us is the busiest time of year. And she also works another full-time job. So we talk about that versus what I do doing this full-time. And, oh, what are your plans for Q1? Q1 is usually pretty slow. And, oh, did you see this update? And what about this time limit? And are you reposting things to other platforms? And yada, yada, yada. And those things that I can't necessarily talk about with my friends who are not content creators. That has been incredibly valuable. And what was the other part of that question?
I mentioned the fact that you've gotten awards for being on TikTok.
Oh, yes, which was a complete surprise, honestly. And that is truly a testament to my community. So these awards specifically are the Cheer Choice Awards, which is a nonprofit fundraiser for Spread the Cheer USA. And in all transparency, I had never heard of the Cheer Choice Awards before I was nominated for an award in 2022. And the awards for that are at April of the following year, so 2023. And people can vote every day for free, or they can donate to Spread the Cheer USA in the form of purchasing votes. And those votes go to the creator they want to, but all the funds go to the nonprofit, which I thought was really cool because at that point I knew I wanted to expand more into nonprofit work, and Spread the Cheer USA is a really, really awesome 501c3. And I went into it not expecting anything. There are massive creators who are a part of the Cheer Choice Awards and really any award show for content creators. And it's an elimination. So you start with several per category and you whittle it down to there's 5 creators per category. And at the end of 2022, which was around the time that I was being laid off from my job, it was a very dark time. I found out that I was going to be in the top 5 for Animal Advocate, which was just an honor to be included in the top 5 at all. And then we did not know who the winner was going to be until the next April, that was a long 4 months, very, very long 4 months. And I did not expect to win. I did not have a speech written at all. And they announced my name as the winner. And I blacked out during that speech. But truly, it is a testament to my community on TikTok. They're the ones who nominated my account. They voted every day. They helped donate to spread the Cheer USA. And I think that's a testament to how wonderful they are. And I say that our community won this award. I didn't win this award because without them, it wouldn't have been possible. And then this last year, we were nominated for Top Fundraiser, and we also won that award as a community, which is such an honor. If there are 2 things that I wanted to do with this platform that I was fortunate enough to get, it was help animals, help people. So Animal Advocate and Top Fundraiser it was a dream come true. And you don't need an award to know that you're doing the right thing and that you're on the right path. But especially that first one with Animal Advocate in April of 2023, when I was so new to this career and really kind of feeling out like, can I do this? Am I on the right path? It felt like a sign that, yes, I am on the right path. And not because I won this award, but because I have a community who backs me up. And they like being here and support me enough to get us to this point. So I think we can keep going on this path. So it means a lot, but it means a lot because it's a reflection of our community.
Yes. Yeah. I wanted to make sure, that there's moments for you were highlighted here because, everything even you just said with the fundraising and the organization are so important to spreading more good in the world. Now, before I start to wrap things up here at the end, is there anything else that you would like the listeners to hear today?
I think the only other thing there's so many things that I wish I could tell people. Ultimately, I'm just so thankful for this career, and I hope that it is a career that can stick around. Just this week, heard that TikTok is up on the chopping block again. And as a watcher of TikTok and as somebody who uses the platform to help people and animals, it's very disheartening. I understand some of the reasoning behind it, but ultimately this app connects people in ways that some other platforms can't. Video is so compelling in ways that text and image-based platforms like Facebook and Instagram are not. Those have their place, and I think TikTok has its place. And the way that some people have been able to use TikTok to truly make a difference in the world, I think is really astounding, and it would be such a shame to see it go. That being said, I do think if TikTok were to go, I think something very similar would pop up in its place. So I don't want people to lose hope there. But if for what it's worth, TikTok has been a place where my community has been able to help people and animals in ways that I didn't think were possible. And I think it is a wonderful addition to the social media platforms.
Yes, yeah, the timing of recording and hearing that news is hard, and we don't know what will come in the new year. So we will hope for the best with all of that. And as, social media sees changes as it has, even in just the past few years. So yes, I think your community has been doing great work. And I'm so grateful you were able to share all of that with us today. But at the end of all my episodes, I do ask my guests a random question that doesn't have to do with what we've been talking about. I did not look up what I asked you to kind of give an update there. So I've got a different question for you today. And that is, what is your go-to breakfast?
Oh, that is fantastic because my favorite genre of food is breakfast food. Currently, I love eggs and toast. It has been a staple in my diet since I was very, very young. So I would probably say eggs and toast. There's a breakfast place or breakfast and brunch place it's around a lot of places called First Watch, and they have a really fabulous steak and eggs meal on their holiday menu, and it is really, really tasty. So I've gotten that a few times. Anything with eggs, I would say, but breakfast is appropriate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that is a statement I will stand behind.
All right, that brings this episode to a close. So, of course, I will be leaving Julia's TikTok in the description, but I will also be leaving her Instagram handle as well. It is the same as on TikTok, but always good to leave another social media. And she does also have a YouTube page that she may start posting more on as well. Of course, if you would like to connect with the podcast, our website is in the description as well. It brings you to all of our social medias. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And of course, my email is in the description if you would like to reach out and connect with me on anything. I'm obviously not accepting new guests at this point, but that email address still exists. And there is also a link to support the podcast monetarily if you're interested in doing that, as there will continue to remain some expenses as I wind down the podcast and make sure that the website and all of that continue to run. So thank you so much, Julia, for spending time with me today, and to my listeners for taking the time out of your day to hear a new story. Until next time, bye.
Wherever you are in the world, if it is morning, afternoon, evening, or night, I hope you're having an amazing day, and talk to you next time. Bye.